everyone, Lisa from Spellbound Miniatures here, and welcome to our rocking horse tutorial video. This SVG and tutorial originally went out 2 years ago in 21 to our patrons when I had a patron channel, and we've decided to release this SVG now to the whole public. There's two elements to this video. The first is the simpler Christmas decoration or tree ornament you can make using one set of the SVGs. The second is the full 3D Dollhouse Miniature, which is in the second half of this video, and I'll put a timestamp on the screen now if you want to fast forward to that. Okay, so the first file is the Christmas decoration file, and this is how it will look in the SVG. You've got one solid piece with the horse and the rockers. You've got two, well, I've cut two optional, just the sort of body pieces with the rockers, and then two more rockers, and it's up to you how many layers of any of these that you do. So I've cut this slightly, I'd say, larger than you might want, but depending on the size of your Christmas tree, or if you want to make this, say, a standalone decoration on a mantelpiece, you'll need to decide exactly what size you want to do it. And it's easier to use the method that I'm going to show you now, oh, excuse the traffic, over in Design Space to get the height that you want. So we'll go to Design Space, I'll show you how to size it, and then we'll come back. Okay, so here we have the SVG for the Christmas decoration in Design Space, and if you know what size you want your decoration, we need to make sure that you've hidden all of the file. If you do want it exactly as it comes in, make sure that the green square measures 1 inch square. Other than that, hide the green square and unhide the shape that's got the rocking horse and the rockers. And when you click on it, you'll see it gives you the height. I'm in inches in this one, and you make sure the padlock is locked. You can change the height. So if you want to make a 3 inch high decoration, change it to 3, and if you know you want it 7 inches wide, change it to 7, and that's as easy as that. Okay, so hopefully you've decided the size that you want. I've cut mine in matte board. You don't want it much smaller than this, which is 4.5 inches in matte board. It starts to get a little tricky on the hoof detail. So if you go much smaller than that, you probably want to do layers of craft board. Now I've already glued 2 layers together here. So I've got 2 layers of the whole piece with the horse and the rockers, and then I've got single layer of matte board here for each of the body only, and then the rockers at the bottom are again 2 layers thick. You could do the body 2 layers thick, but this is where it's completely up to you. So you could just have this as a sort of 2-dimensional decoration. You could put some ribbon on it, and if you were going to do 2 layers, you could actually glue the ribbon in between the layers, and I suggest about there. You don't want it much further back, or it sort of tips, so you kind of want it at the back, at the base of the neck, at the top of the shoulders. So if you want to glue some ribbon in, do that between 2 layers, and you could simply decorate that as it is. You could put glitter on the rockers, decorate the horse, draw in an eye, nose and mouth detail, and attach some wool or embroidery thread, or even if you've got some mohair for the mane and tail. Or we've also included some cuttable, and I would suggest from craftboard because of the amount of detail, some shapes to make again a 2-dimensional tail and a mane which follows the curve of the neck. I've done these in white, but you could do them in glitter card, in a contrasting colour, and then a little forelock as well. So you could glue those on, do them in a different colour, or use glitter, glue, pens, anything like that. So that's an easy 2-dimensional Christmas decoration. If you wanted to get a little more depth on the tail, you could duplicate one of these pieces in Design Space and shrink it slightly so that when you, and I haven't done it for this, but you can imagine when you layer it up, you could offset it slightly, and it would be slightly smaller, so you'd kind of get that effect of layers in a tail. And you could do the same for the mane. Shrink it slightly and then it will just sort of offset and you'll get a little extra layers and dimension there. Also, we've included these parts and you'll see they fit exactly on there and they give you a really nice shoulder detail there. You could again keep it sort of one-sided, 2-dimensional, and just don't put the mane on until you've glued that bit on, and then it will just drape over the shoulder, which looks quite good. Or you could turn this into a more 3-dimensional model by putting the shoulder and body detail on both sides. And then this is where the extra rockers work. If you put that on, you suddenly get another layer again. And you could build this as wide as you like. So to take that to the extreme, here's one I made earlier, quite wide, and these bars are from the actual Rocking Horse SVG. If you wanted to do this, they're in that, just need to size them up accordingly. So this you could make as a standalone ornament for your mantelpiece, and it's the very sort of basics of the beginning of the Rocking Horse actual piece of furniture. But you can see here it's solid, so it's kind of this. I did it slightly differently because this has the rockers incorporated onto the feet. This one didn't. This was a prototype I was playing around with. So of course, if you use this, the rockers will be solid across the bottom. But either way, you'll get a very similar effect. So you could build that out and do more and more layers of the head on the body and just the body and get an even wider one. But I think if you're going to actually hang this in the tree, you don't want it too heavy. Although matte board itself isn't heavy, I mean visually you don't want like a massive 3D ornament in there. I think this couple of layers is enough just to give it really nice detail and to reflect some light and have some shadows. So I'm going to go and decorate this now. I've got all sorts of things here, so I did pick up some, I've got some glitter card and I've got some bells, and of course you could go mad with the glitter, all different kind of frosty colours, whatever colourway you want, and even sweet wrappers you could use to create a sort of a blanket for the saddle. There is a saddle in the actual Rocking Horse SVG, but for 2-dimensional you might not want to go to that level of detail. You might just want to kind of do a hint of a saddle or a blanket on the horse. So I'm going to go and have some fun and play around with that, and then I'll put a photo up at the end of my finished version. And of course there's like 101,000 million combinations that you could do to customize this for yourself. Okay, so here we are, and you can see I, in the end, chose completely different colours. So I've gone for a, which is the colour of my tree this year, it's pale sort of blush pinks and copper tones and gold and white. So I completely changed it up, and as usual I've made it difficult for myself to video and photograph it with all the shiny surfaces, but you can see there the mane and tail work really well. I don't know if I was, oh yeah, you can see that there. I did the blanket, but because this horse is thinner than the actual sort of the Dollhouse version, I cut a section out of the template for the blanket. So I'll put some photos of that in the written instructions. So it really is a case of customizing it to suit, because when we're designing it, we don't know exactly how thick or thin you want these. So you can always squish the SVG or physically cut the piece out, but the basic shapes are there. And I've done a very, very simple bridle, literally just from the same microfiber suede as the blanket. I cut strips and glued them round just for the effect of a bridle. Drilled in and put in an eye pin to hold it up, and you can't see it there. It's just slightly sort of hangs that way rather than that way, so I could afford to bring the where it attaches back, I think, even more. Difficult to show you, but yeah, so you might have to play around with that. You might want to have a go at fitting this before you put the saddle on, because then you could cover up any holes that you don't want. But always dry fit everything. I think the mane and tail work really well. I literally just, can you see that? It's just one layer there stuck on with super glue, and the same for the tail. And essentially it's a two-dimensional object, so I haven't really done so much on the back there. When it hangs in the tree, you only see this side. You could do both sides. So I was really pleased with how that turned out. And again, it's quite large, you could make it smaller, and I think next year I'd like to make several of them all over the tree. So that's a great one to start with, and then we'll move on now to we call it, refer to it as the 3D version. So it's the actual piece of furniture rocking horse rather than the more two-dimensional Christmas decoration. Oh, and one more thing, that lovely copper colour on that there paints so nicely on is an art metal colour. Art metal, it's just 5109 copper. It's such a lovely paint, dries really quickly and has a nice even finish. So this is kind of the basic shapes, and you'll have seen we've labelled them in the SVG. It really is up to you how you make this, and it's surprisingly simple. It was more complicated to design it, I think, than it is to build it. I found the mane and tail, because I used some real hair for that, was quite tricky, hence why we've done that option of a mane and tail. I'll come on to that at the end. So you'll see in the written instructions that we've given you an example of how we made the white rocking horse, and all of these pieces are pairs that I've already glued. So when you see that there, that's not two pieces of craft board, it's actually four. and it's really a good idea to cut all the shapes, especially if you're not sure of the size or scale that you want. Cut out what you think, and you can build it without having to glue it all, and see if you think that that fits well in your the room, house or diorama that you're doing, because there is really no set size for rocking horses. So we've kind of gone for a good, I'd say 12th scale nursery size or child sized one. You can make it larger or smaller. So this is shape A, body and no neck, 4 layers. Then I've got 2 of the B, which is the full horse. Again, 2 layers of craft board. And I'm not going to glue them at the minute, I'm just going to show you. And this is very much like the Christmas decoration at this point. And next we have 2 of C, which is the body and head and neck with ears but no legs. Because what we're going to create here, so far everything on the head has got ears, and they will line up better when you glue them. So we've kind of got the thickness there that we want for our ears, and this is why it's a good idea for you to cut and play around with them before you glue them, so that it looks how you want it to look. So that's 4 A's, 2 B's and 2 C's. Where are they? There. I didn't need 4. When I said 2, I meant 2 layers. So I'm confusing myself now. Right. That's right, that doesn't look so thick, that's right. So 4 A's, 2 B's, 2 C's, and 2 of the D, 2 layers, that's a pair of D, with no ears. And this is going to start the gap between the ears on a horse's head. And then we have 3 E's. Now E is a bit of a weird one, as you can see, it's got the notches out for the mane and the tail. And if you put it in, it creates a handy, can you see there, a ridge? So if you wanted to glue, actually glue some wool, some embroidery thread, or some hair or faux hair, there's actual notches there, so that when you put the other D on the other side, it creates this sort of slit. So you don't have to do that, and if you don't want to do that, you would just put more D's, sorry, the one without the ears, to create that gap in between the horse's ears. But I found that really handy when I did the white or the grey horse. So that's the one with the notches out for the mane and tail. So that's 3 E's. Again, you could do 4, you can make it as thick or as thin as you like. Then we just go back the other way. So we have 2 D's, 2 C's, 2 B's, and last of all, 4 A's. I'm going to try and hold these all together, and you'll see you end up with a rump with a hole for the tail, and you end up with a head, I don't know if you can see that, with 2 ears and a gap between the ears. They're not very well lined up, so they're not the prettiest. And then we have the general shape there. We have some width, so if this was in a nursery, you'd have what I think a believable width for a child to sit on, and that's that simple. I did, if you've seen Instagram, I've got a pendant drill, and I did, it kind of whizzes round, a bit like a Dremel, but I find it easier, and smoothed that shoulder and did some rounding, and you could do that just to make it look even more, I'd say, realistic. But it's actually, I think, fairly good. And also to get rid of the layers, I did some of the usual super glue over the layers and then sanded that as well. So it's up to you, but if you don't want to sand and you don't want to use super glue, you actually get a fairly, I think, realistic form with that. So that would be that, and you'd glue that and set it, leave it to set. And then the rockers, I've got, let me see, 5, I think, 5 or 6 layers, that's up to you. And these are the kind of struts, and I'll show you on this larger one here. You don't want to make your horse, I would say, wider than these. So if you end up with a really wide horse, just increase the width of these. So if you imagine we've got this horse, and when he's actually glued and pressed, he's quite narrow still. So you could definitely, there's room there to make him a little bit wider if you wanted to. And so, can you see that there? That's how wide he is compared to that there. So, and on this one, we got a sort of, it'd almost be like a footboard, I think, where you'd stand on to get onto the horse. So that's why we've done that. And they're not flat on the bottom, they're in the middle. So this is just an exercise in patience, and you could measure it, but I kind of did it by hand. You want to make sure, obviously, that wherever you put these, they're in the same place on both of them. So you could put one at the very end, and you could measure. You definitely want one for each of the hooves to sit on, and we've sort of angled it there so it glues onto the bottom of the front hooves and almost, I would say, under the toe of the back hoof. So let's get that. It won't move obviously when it's glued. So that would go under there, and then the one at the back goes under the toes. And then that's, if you imagine, it's there, I'm trying to get my hands out of the way, you would then see where that actually fits on. And I would glue those on first when you've got those bits there. And then that's a good starting point. And then, if say those are there, you'll see that one naturally would sit at the bottom, and then you can fit these in where looks best. And if you want to use some extra ones, cut some extra ones, you can make that, just they all fit on there, 5 of them, to make a planked effect. So again, take your time with that one and just work your way slowly. Fit them on the horse first, and fit the ones that are on the horse onto the one rocker first. And I kind of did all on this rocker and then carefully put that one on top. And then whether you want to put it on the rocker first or whether you want to decorate the horse first, that's up to you. I kind of put it on and treated it as one whole unit. And then again, as with the Christmas decoration, you can do the blanket, you can do the saddle. We've put in the instructions which order to do the saddle in. It has an option of raising up the back slightly with a wedge, and then I don't know if you can see that there, the smaller bit goes on top of the larger bit, and there's the thicker bit there at the back. And then it's just shape it. This is craft board, it will move. I mean, you don't have to make it out of craft board, you could make it out of material. And I don't glue the flaps at this point. I put the glue in the middle, because if you do want to put stirrups in, the stirrups go under that flap like that. The girth goes under the larger flap, and it's up to you. You can see with this one I didn't use any girth or stirrups, and it just gives the hint still of a saddle. On the grey I did a full sort of version of a pared down saddle, so I did the girth under the larger flaps, and then I did stirrups like that in craft board. And then these are just strips of any size, if you know what I mean. It's up to you to cut them to the size that you want, depending on the scale of your horse and how long you want your stirrups. I used some wire and some pliers to shape some very simple stirrups, but it's just enough to give an effect. I wouldn't look at them too closely. So the grey, I painted the craft board red. I'm thinking this one I'm going to stain it to have a lovely wooden horse, and so he might then have a black saddle on. The saddle's slightly too wide for him, so I'm probably going to bulk him out on the width a little more. I think he's a little on the skinny side, so I'll probably put in some more of the shape D, which is this one. No ears and no legs, and that will just increase the gap between the ears. And then I'll probably also do some more of B to give him slightly wider ears, and then a couple more A's to give him a little bit more muscle, and then the saddle will look right on him. On the grey I didn't use a saddle blanket. I will on this one. I think it adds quite a nice effect. And also on this saddle I just used a dotting tool with that copper, and to give that effect of riveted, because sometimes on rocking horses they kind of rivet the bridle and saddle on, so that's why I did that. So the hair, it was very difficult, and I couldn't video myself doing it because I didn't know how it was going to turn out. It did actually turn out all right. Depending on what you get when where from, depends on how easy of a job it is. So the hair came on sort of a seam, so I was able to tuck the seam and glue it into there, so that was quite easy. The tail was not so easy, so what I did was I cut the tail off of the seam, the fibres, and actually glued them around each other, getting wider and wider, and then poked it in and glued it in. I don't think it's the firmest tail. And I can't show you that horse. That's how horse is now over in the States. So hence why we've only got photos of that one. But I was hoping to get a bit more of a drape on the mane, and you'll see in the photos it's a little bit sticky up. It wasn't as soft as I liked. So I'm going to try and get an even softer sort of mohair for this one. But if in doubt, you can always use the ones in the SVG. But I think if you get wool or embroidery thread and silk embroidery thread, and you can brush that out with like a pet brush as well, that works. So That's the trickiest bit, and I can understand now, having done this, why real life rocking horses are so expensive, because it's not just the design, and it took us quite a while to get this, the look right, the flow of it. It's the finishing of them with the mane, the tail, and the tack as well, the saddle and the bridle. So no wonder they're so expensive in real life. So that's that. I won't have this finished for the video today, but I'll be putting up the photos of the grey that was finished. Oh, and there's another variation. So this is smaller again. So I've done several sizes. This one's tiny. It's not 24th, I'd say. It's still very much 12th. Literally, I only used parts B and the rockers and the cross struts, and then once I knew the width that I wanted, I simply cut or created a square in Design Space for the dimensions, and also a heart. It's a heart that way, a heart shape, and cut that for the width that I wanted as well, and used a cocktail stick there as a handle. So that's another version of a sort of sit-in one. And there are also ones, aren't there, if you put that together, and you could have a cocktail stick either side as handles to hold on to as well. So that's literally, I don't know if I can count these up, I think three layers of craft board for each side, and then actually the square and the heart are matte board. They're a little sturdier, and the rockers are matte board because that's quite a simple shape to cut, so you can mix and match your craft and matte board on these. So that's another version. So yeah, I've yet to think up some more. I hope you followed that. I hope you enjoy making it, and I look forward to seeing any that you made. It really does excite us when we see what you've made with our files. Here's another quick idea I had. You could use the same ornament elements and put them on a Christmas card. And here's just some other photos of the ornament hanging in a tree or on a mantelpiece. These are some shots of the bridle as I made them for the grey, and I did use some silver jump rings for the bit and the stirrups. The rocking horse fit perfectly in our bow window in our toy shop, and those files are also over on our website. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you soon.